So this year's NFL free agency and trade period is one that's going to go down in the history books. And considering the fact that the major part of this historic free agency period is already past us, and with the NFL draft right around the corner, I thought it'd be interesting to go ahead and go back and kind of cover what happened. So today I'm going to go and list off every single NFL team's biggest acquisition in this year's NFL offseason and talk a little bit about how it will impact the team moving forward. But before we get started, I wanted to take some time to thank you all in advance for 2,000 subscribers. I record my videos one day ahead of time, so we may actually have 2,000 subscribers by the time this video goes up, but regardless, thank you. I also want to quickly mention that only a small percentage of the people who watch my videos are actually subscribed, so if you do end up enjoying the video and haven't done so already, please do consider subscribing to keep up with the daily NFL football content coming out on this channel. And with that being said, let's get started. Starting at the top, we have the Arizona Cardinals, and you all know what this one's going to be. This one is going to be DeAndre Hopkins, and this still blows my mind. The Cardinals, of course, acquired Hopkins in a trade with the Texans in exchange for David Johnson and a couple of picks, and I don't understand it, but Hopkins should have an immediate impact on that Cardinals team and will help make them a dangerous team on offense moving forward. Moving on, we have the Atlanta Falcons, who picked up Todd Gurley in free agency after he was released by the Rams. Now, Todd Gurley used to be one of the greatest backs in the NFL, arguably the best back in the NFL, but the reason why he was released is because he's been dealing with a degenerative knee, which has caused him to fall off just slightly. However, this is still a huge acquisition for the Falcons. Next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens, who got Calais Campbell in a trade with the Jaguars for only a 5th rounder. Now, this will be Calais Campbell's year 34 season. He's starting to get on the wrong side of 30, and he's also seen a decline in production over the past couple of years when talking about sacks, but as far as I'm concerned, this is still a great move by the Ravens. Campbell is a durable defensive lineman that should have an instant impact on the team. Next up, the Buffalo Bills received Stephon Diggs in a trade with the Vikings, trading away their 1st-round pick along with a handful of other picks. Now, that said, Diggs is going to be a great weapon for Josh Allen, who's heading into his 3rd season in the league. Allen finally has a true number 1 to throw to, and the Bills are looking scary with the addition of Diggs. Moving on to the Carolina Panthers, who brought Teddy Bridgewater in through free agency, letting Cam Newton walk. And although they did Cam Newton very, very dirty, Teddy is still a solid game manager who will flourish when surrounded by solid talent and is a very safe move for the Panthers moving forward. Continuing on down the list, we have the Chicago Bears, who acquired Robert Quinn in free agency. Now, Quinn had 11.5 sacks last year and made a big impact on that Cowboys defensive front, and pairing him with Khalil Mack is sure to make the Bears defense even scarier than it already is. We then have the Cincinnati Bengals, who acquired Von Bell in free agency from the Saints. Now, Bell is a turnover-creating machine. As a Saints fan, I know this, and he's a solid safety overall that should have an immediate impact on that Bengals secondary. Now, in Cleveland, the Browns were able to score one of the best offensive linemen on the market in Jack Conklin, coming over from the Tennessee Titans. And with the Browns' offensive line woes, this signing will help a lot and should open up that offense quite a bit. America's team were able to bring in Gerald McCoy, who is a solid addition for the Cowboys at defensive tackle. He comes in from Carolina, where he started all 16 games last year and should become a staple of that Cowboys defensive line. The Broncos look to create a 1-2 punch at the running back position, bringing in Melvin Gordon to pair him in the backfield with Phillip Lindsay, and that 2-headed Denver backfield will make for an absolute nightmare for opposing defenses. The Lions look to continue to become the budget version of the New England Patriots under Matt Patricia, bringing in Patriots linebacker Jamie Collins. In all seriousness, though, this is a great signing for the Lions, as Jamie Collins will make an immediate serious impact on that Lions defense. Now, the Packers have been relatively quiet during this crazy offseason. However, they did manage to bring in Christian Kirksey, and as of late, Christian Kirksey has kind of caught the injury bug, but when he is healthy, he is a great linebacker, and this will be regarded as a great addition for the Packers if he can simply stay healthy. Next, we move on to the Texans, and Bill O'Brien. What the hell do you think you're doing, man? You got rid of DeAndre Hopkins for a washed-up running back? Well, it's okay, I guess, because you replaced him with Randall Cobb. Oh boy. Moving on. The Colts made a very big and bold move for their defense, striking up a deal with the 49ers to bring in star defensive tackle DeForest Buckner in exchange for their first rounder. But that doesn't matter. The Colts' defensive front is getting really scary. In Jacksonville, the Jaguars brought Joe Schobert over from the Browns in free agency, agreeing to a 5-year deal. Now, this is definitely going to shake things up in that Jacksonville Jaguar lineup, but overall, it's a pretty solid acquisition. Moving on to the reigning Super Bowl champs. Now, Kansas City has actually been relatively quiet after their Super Bowl win. The only player that they actually brought in is Antonio Hamilton, a cornerback from the Giants, who kind of is a nobody. However, this is expected with the Chiefs' cap situation and the fact that they will have to pay Mahomes sooner rather than later, so not a big free agency splash from the Kansas City Chiefs. Next up, we have the Las Vegas Raiders, which is something I have to get used to saying, who brought in Corey Littleton from the Rams in free agency, and Littleton was all around a solid linebacker for the Rams and should make his presence known on that Raiders defense. The LA Chargers beefed up that O-line in free agency, which struggled last year, by bringing in Brian Bulaga, who agreed to a 3-year contract with the Bolts, and pairing Bulaga with the addition of Try Turner should go a very long way in protecting whoever lines up under center for the Chargers in 2020. Staying in LA, the Rams have actually been focusing on re-signing players rather than bringing new ones in. However, they did bring in Leonard Floyd from the Bears in free agency on a 1-year contract, and while Floyd has shown flashes, it really hasn't been consistent, and the Rams hope to turn these flashes into consistent performances on the field. Taking a trip to South Florida, the Miami Dolphins landed one of the best cornerbacks in the league in Byron Jones, who comes over from the Cowboys in free agency. Pairing Byron Jones with Xavier Howard under Brian Flores' defense should cause some noise in 2020. Moving up north to Minnesota, the Vikings have really lost more than they gained. You can't really fault them at the same time when you take into account their cap space. However, they did manage to bring Michael Pierce over from the Ravens in free agency, who is a great run-stopping defensive lineman. New England has seen much better years in terms of free agency. Yeah, Tom Brady, they're not taking that loss well. They really haven't made any big splashes, however, as well, which is kind of strange, but they did bring Adrian Phillips in, who will be a great veteran presence as an addition for that defense at the safety position. My New Orleans Saints have been making some serious moves this offseason, despite the cap hell that we were supposed to endure, which we didn't endure thanks to the cap god Mickey Loomis. But with that being said, we were able to add Emmanuel Sanders to the roster, who is going to pair really well with Michael Thomas to create a lethal receiving core. Moving on to New York City, starting with the Giants. The Giants haven't made many huge splashes, but they did bring in a solid cornerback in James Bradbury. He did spend some time in Carolina covering the league's best as the #1 corner out there and turned out some pretty solid performances. Staying in New York, the Jets added some help to their offensive line in Connor McGovern. Center has been a pretty weak point for the Jets, as has their offensive line as a whole, and McGovern will look to anchor down the line as the Jets hopefully will continue to look to build on this unit later down the line. In Philadelphia, the Eagles got a much-needed upgrade at corner, acquiring Darius Slay in a trade with the Lions in exchange for a 3rd and 5th rounder, and Slay will look to become a staple of that Eagles secondary, as he did receive a 3-year extension from the Eagles. Staying in Pennsylvania, the Steelers got Big Ben, a big target, and ex-Colts tight end Eric Ebron. Now, Ebron is a reliable tight end that should help Big Ben as he does come back from injury. The 49ers throughout free agency have focused more on maintaining their Super Bowl caliber roster rather than splurging and making big splashes out in the market. The 49ers also did have some cap space related issues, which seems to make a lot of sense with their lack of activity, but they did bring Travis Benjamin in from the Chargers in free agency on a 1-year deal. Similar to the 49ers, the Seahawks really haven't made any major splashes in this year's offseason. However, they did manage to bring in Quinton Dunbar on a trade with the Washington Redskins for a 5th rounder, which is an absolute steal. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers haven't done much this offseason other than sign Tom Brady, of course. Oh my God. This is arguably the biggest splash a team has made in free agency in a long time, and Brady will, without a doubt, have a major impact on the Buccaneers. The Titans have been another team that hasn't really made any big moves, which is somewhat shocking as they went into this period of the offseason with the 9th most cap space in the league, but they did sign Tannehill and everything like that, so that kind of makes some sense. However, they did acquire Vic Beasley, who has shown flashes of greatness on the Falcons. And last but not least, we have the Washington Redskins. Now, the Redskins have had a cautious approach to free agency, which makes a lot of sense with Ron Rivera. He's definitely making his presence known on that Washington squad. However, they did bring in Kendall Fuller from the Chiefs, who is one of the best slot corners in the NFL and should make an immediate impact on that secondary. That said, that concludes the list of each NFL team's best free agency move, and that's about it for this video. But before I go, let me ask you, what is your favorite move from your favorite NFL team this offseason?